Scrappy Peeps, Suzanna here today for Scale It Down to share with you part 2 of stitching in your traveler's notebook. So that was the spread that I created, and I used DMC floss, and I actually stitched directly into my traveler's notebook. Well, actually it's a page. So that's what I did. Unfortunately, I did not film the process of the actual stitching because let me just tell you that it took, I think that was probably the 4th try before I got what I wanted. And even then, I'm not going to use it in the way that I had originally intended. So what I did was I cut out letters using my silhouette using a block font like that. And then I punched holes in the font, the B and the K to be specific, in order to stitch. And DMC floss is actually pretty thick, so I pulled the floss apart and only used 3 strands. It comes with 6. And then I stitched in to the holes that I had pre-poked. And so the first time I had the holes too close, so everything tore, or the paper tore, and you couldn't tell. And then the second time, what did I do? I did something wrong the second time. And so the third time and the final time, which is this, is where I got what I wanted for the most part. So the colors threads that I chose were based on that pattern paper that you see there from Pretty Little Studio. The bulk of the elements that I have here are Pretty Little Studio. It comes from the Tales of Dreams collection primarily, but I do have a couple of things from the Sweet Life collection as well. I think that's what it is. And I do have a couple of things that are not Pretty Little Studio, but the bulk of it is indeed Pretty Little Studio. So these photos are of the books that are currently on my nightstand. I love to read. I just don't have a lot of time to read, so some of those books have been sitting there for a fairly long time, and that's basically what the journaling is all about. So I knew I wanted to use the, I'm going to call it rainbow, and I know it's not a rainbow, but the multicolored, that striped paper that I'm cutting now, as the main piece in the layout. And what you'll see me do is the piece that I stitched, I am going to put down and not like the way that I put it down, so pull it up. So there is actually going to end up being a crease in that, or 2 creases in that piece of pattern paper. And that's okay, because there could be worse things. So I ran the piece that I cut down through my Xyron, and I'm going to adhere that, and that will form the base of that page there. For future reference too, this piece that I stitched is actually a piece out of the Traveler's Notebook. This is early on in this particular notebook, so I just took a piece from the middle, and then that way it's a double page spread. That way, if I want to do something similar to what I'm doing here, where I want to use tone on tone, pardon me, if I want to use tone on tone, I can do that and have matching paper. So I really toyed, and I kind of struggled with how I was going to incorporate this into the layout. I knew I wanted to put something underneath book, and I thought that this might be how I was going to wallpaper the second page, but I decided that that was too busy, and it needed that white to soften the brightness of all the colors on the opposite page. So I'm just going to use that green to back the photo, which really actually pops the photo. And then somehow still needed to incorporate book into it. That peach journal tag is from crepe paper. It's old. I dug pretty far into my stash for that. And incidentally, a lot of the pieces that I pulled for this, I pulled a lot of peachy pinks and aquas. I set aside and I saved to use on a second layout. Sorry about my voice. It's that transition from summer to spring for us. Somehow the allergies here in Virginia tend to get very, very worse. That's very bad English. Tend to get a lot worse for me. So again, I apologize for the froggy voice there. So this is where you see that I adhere it to the journal card, and the problem with it being on this particular journal card, I like it, But the problem is that when you put love, which is the second word that I want to complete the title, to me it throws off the balance of the layout. And not necessarily the layout, but of the title and the way that all those stripes go. I also probably should have, if I had moved it down, it might have looked better. But because you have that same salmony pink sitting on top of the same salmony pink, it gets lost and you lose the definition of that journal card. One way I could have solved that with the sewing was perhaps to actually sew again around it in a navy blue, and that might have popped it up off of there. But those are a lot of the things that you see after the fact, or also that experience teaches you, really. So here I am very carefully pulling it off of that journal card, and I decide it looks much better straight across right there on the notebook itself, and it stays consistent with the horizontal components that I have actually really created on that particular page there. And so in order to incorporate the color into it and still maintain that sort of peachy pink, I will take a pen and just draw two loose lines on the top and the bottom. I knew I wanted the title to be Book Love, and I really wanted to incorporate that heart, but again, the heart was not consistent with that horizontal feeling that I had created on that page there. So I'm going to use that indicator tag, and that actually does not come from Sweet Life, which is what I thought. I had toyed with the one that says Love from Sweet Life, but the color was off, and I really wanted to use these aqua letters, and those are really old from a basic gray collection. I think it was the birthday party one. I can't remember what that is. So that will finish off the title for that left-hand side of the page there, and then allow me to focus on the photo over on the other side of the page. And we're doing the usual Suzanna title shuffle, as I am terrible at lining up letters. I will tell you I've gotten much better using that ruler, the center line ruler, though. It's just a matter of remembering to pull out the center line ruler. So this is a little bit of a longer video. I apologize for that, but as you can see, I kind of struggled with where things were going to go and how things were going to go, and I wanted to show you how it's not always a quick and easy process. I love using this traveler's notebook, and in fact, this notebook, so I'm not sure if you saw when I flipped the page previously, but I had a previous video of my daughter and I when we went to a human circus where humans played the animals. And then this is on the back side of that. And I decided, so I had started it off as being the 52 Weeks project over at Paper Issues, but I decided I really wanted to make this a book about me. So that was my time with my daughter. This is about my love of books, yet my inability to sit down and actually read them. And so I'm going to try and do a page a week still. However, it's going to be about me, whereas most of the 12 by 12 and the 8.5 by 11 pages that I do are of the kids or family life, and this is going to be more about me is what I've decided this book is, the book of me. So there's the lines that I refer to, and that's just a distress pen that I'm using, very thin, and you'll see how that incorporates that into the close-ups. And then again, to stick with that horizontal look, I've got a label down below, and that is from Tales of Dreams with hearts that are from Sweet Life from Pretty Little Studio, and that wraps up the left-hand side of the page. Super simple. Then I just put a bunch of layers behind the photo there. Some of it is paper, some of it is the journal card that I messed up from the other side. And I am going to tuck in a little piece of that vellum up the top for the pop of yellow to tie the yellow from the left-hand page into the right-hand page. And then I'm going to add just a few elements there. The flower, hot pink flower with the blue center, is from Sweet Life. I love the way that the elements from Pretty Little Studio carry over from one collection to another. Those arrows came in a Cocoa Daisy kit ages and ages ago. I'm really trying to blow through my stash and use up some stuff. I have a lot of new stuff, but I also really like my old stuff as well. And if you know me, you know that I like to incorporate old and new and use the old stuff to liven up use the new stuff to liven up some of the older stuff that has collected in my stash. And then I'm just going to journal down below, and that calls that page done. So that is sewing in your traveler's notebook. I can't say that I really enjoyed sewing in my traveler's notebook because it's not actually directly into my notebook. I love the way that the title turned out, but I do think it would look better on a scrapbook page. For me personally, it looks great in the book, but the whole process was not really something that I enjoyed, but I think it's good to test your boundaries and see what works for you. I am going to use this really old stamp and just stamp a couple of books in there and then call that done. So be sure to head over to Simone's YouTube channel and see how she stitched in her notebook. We did do this same series or this same topic 2 weeks ago, so be sure to check out that video if you haven't already seen it. Thanks for stopping in today. I hope we're inspiring you to journal and or memory keep in your traveler's notebook. Enjoy the close-ups. I hope you're doing well. Take care.